Hello, salut, buongiorno, and welcome to another episode of the Traveler's Haven podcast series, where we will be looking at all things true travel professionals need to hear. Once again, I'm Sam, and I'll be your host. For the last couple of episodes, we've been focusing on the nurse perspective and the problems they face. But for today, I thought it'd be a nice change of pace to instead focus on the landlords that help provide travel nurses and all type of travel professionals with the housing they need to succeed. So on that note, let me introduce today's guest, landlord consultant and founder of Ontario Landlords Watch, Kayla Andrade. Hello.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
No problem. Kayla Andrade is a dedicated advocate, landlord consultant, and ambassador for FrontLobby. She founded Ontario Landlords Watch, a grassroots advocacy organization that supports landlords, tenants, and taxpayers by addressing rental housing market challenges and legislation. She is a frontline fighter for positive change in the housing industry and a pillar of support for her community. So I brought you on today. I have a couple questions so we can go through them and just give me
Fire
whatever comes to mind.
them
Yeah.
off.
All right. So starting out, could you tell me the story of why you started the Ontario Landlords Watch group? And was there a singular event that prompted you, or was it a series of things?
Yeah, great question. So as of in 2010, the city of Cambridge made landlords responsible for their tenants' delinquent utility bills. Me being a landlord since the age of 18, so I was just kind of into it for a couple of years back in 2010. I didn't really know a lot about it. I just knew that the counselor, who potential counselor who was campaigning at the time, who told us about this policy that was going to be pushed through. She really held my hand and kind of worked me through understanding what the policy was about, how to object to it at the city hall, and just knowing that I needed to inform as many landlords as I possibly could about what was going to be happening in Cambridge and obviously eventually across Ontario. So we decided to come together and have our first protest at City Hall, and then we started having meetings in the Royal Canadian Legions, and then we just formed a Facebook group, not only to talk about water billing, but it now, based on our water billing petition that we did, it came back with notes and it came back with messages asking us to help them fight the Residential and Tenancy Act and the Landlord and Tenant Board. So that's when Ontario Landlords Watch went from water billing all the way to the Landlord and Tenant Board and the Residential and Tenancy Act, and really trying to find a better way for housing, not just for good landlords, good tenants, and also the taxpayers. So that's how we started to form Ontario Landlords Watch back in 2010, and since then it's now been a support for landlords, property managers, and paralegals across the province. And we even get people from out of town coming in just because they want to know what's happening in Ontario before they even invest. So it's a great community that that I've created, and we've really become very connected and tight with each other. And you get to see that through our conferences that we usually have every year.
Okay. So it started out a lot smaller and like more narrow focus. So how was the growth and like becoming a bigger group? Did you find it difficult to like branch out to more topics, or did you find it like as it grew bigger, did it just sort of naturally come?
Oh, it was natural. It's either through the petition, then we had media reaching out to me, wondering about the petition, how we took it to the provincial government, and then there was an election, so we had to start back all over again. Then we traveled to different landlords associations that are across Ontario, attended their meetings to get their support. And of course, like when I first started getting landlords involved with Ontario Landlords Watching the water billing, that was me calling landlords on Kijiji saying, "Hey, I'm calling about your two-bedroom unit. I'm not calling to rent it. I just want to let you know that, hey, you do have, you may be responsible for the tenant's delinquent utility bill." And we're still fighting that till this day, to be honest. honest. We got a new council, a new mayor, and one of the new council members, she brought forward a policy where she's trying to reverse this because she knows how it's impacted not only the landlord and tenant board and the backlog of dealing with non-payment of a utility, but how it's impacting tenants who can't pay their water bill and now risk of homelessness just because of a water bill. So we're still going through that process. We got a lot of support, but there is like a committee that was formed to figure out how to alleviate the landlords from being responsible, but put it back on the tenants without burdening the ones that they currently have in their system. So it's been a fight that never ends. I know I have to retire one day, but we do have a lot of our feet, not just in water billing right now. A lot of it is going to be at the provincial level, and also trying to encourage them to take the reins back on housing policies because municipal government is starting to get very involved with creating bylaws that impact housing from short-term rental bans, rent eviction bylaws. It's never ending landlord licensing. So we really want the government to step up and say, okay, municipalities, we understand we gave you, the responsibility of providing affordable housing, but unfortunately the policies and the rules should be staying with the province. So hopefully that voice can continue to echo throughout the province.
Mm. Yeah, and I think groups like this are what can help influence that decision, where if enough people speak out, then things do eventually like change for the better. At least I think so.
Oh, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, right? Like that's what we always have to be. I'm a mom of four kids. Usually the one that is yelling the loudest usually gets my attention. I don't know why, it just happens.
No, that's great. Uh, for my watchers, can you share a bit about what OLW does and how it works to connect like landlords to useful resources?
Yeah, so inside of the group, we have our members that can post by themselves. They and show their name, and they can post anonymously what they're looking to get advice on. They can also reach out to me, which I've done on many, many occasions, where I'm able to have a one-on-one consultation with our landlords and just have an understanding of what their rental unit is, what's going on there, what are they planning to do with it, if they have a bad tenant, how do you act to that tenant? Because a lot of landlords are getting their emotions tied to, dealing with their tenants, which is sometimes backfires, right? And puts them in a lot of hot water. So I help them kind of remove their emotions away from it and make it more of a business approach. So definitely doing the one-on-one consulting. And because I am the ambassador to FrontLobby as well as Landlord Credit Bureau, I'm always encouraging our landlords to take advantage of monthly rent reporting. This does help our good tenants build that credit to build their tenancy record. And it also making sure that we're protecting our investments by holding these professional tenants who think that they can just come into your rental unit and stop paying rent because they know how long it takes for them to get their hearing heard at the landlord and tenant board. We're going to hold them accountable by being able to do that monthly rent reporting. So that's why it's important for me to constantly help them deal with their issue, but also have these resources on the side of who I work with, who I would recommend. Some people say, hey, I'm looking for a property manager. I don't always recommend property managers, but I'm like, here are the people that I know in my circle. You reach out because just be like us finding tenants. You do have to do the same type of screening when you're looking for your property manager and make sure that you both are on that same page.
Okay. And so the rent recording I know is one, but are there other like resources that you would suggest people get accustomed to using or maybe look into if they were landlords or homeowners?
Of course. So you have Canley. Canley is where the government has also been able to have a lot of these public orders. So making sure that you're working on Canley. I like a new one that I'm starting to dabble in. It's called Rent Zen. That's where these orders are being posted, but you're also going to be able to determine which adjudicator pushed out that order and how that adjudicator kind of rules. So it's like you really don't know what kind of adjudicator you're going to have before you get into your hearing. But if you do have a hearing that's coming up for review, you're going to want to look at that past adjudicator's history so that it helps you be able to fight back on that review portion of it. So that's that. And then we have open room. We have open room. I always tell our landlords like they have their orders that they can put up on there, and I don't know if they have the mechanism to take it down if the tenant does pay. So making sure that the product does that first, but this is where a lot of frustration, based on the government policies and how they've let landlords go 12 months before they even got a hearing. This is what had transpired into different products and services that are happening. And now what's I think is also becoming a little popular is these rental guarantee programs. So if you are just getting into the market and every dollar counts, you might want to look at what those options look like for a rental guarantee program, in order to protect just in case the tenant doesn't pay. But it's always encourage everyone to look at the fine print of who qualifies for that rental guarantee program, because you don't want to be paying for it and then all of a sudden your tenant didn't meet the criteria, and here you paid in, but they're not going to pay out.
Yep, yep. And that is very common. That is very
Yeah.
So there are also quite a few seminars and conferences that you've spoken at on the behalf of the housing industry. And in fact, you recently presented a report at the Affordable Housing Summit in regards to rent, housing, and tenant responsibility. So would it be all right to hear some of the points you made there? If you remember, you can paraphrase if you want.
And I know there was I think it was 13 pages.
Yep.
And that was me shortening it, but a lot of them were links to different stories that have been put into the media over the last couple of months. But we had a situation where we're trying to understand that the RTA is the way it is. We're not going to get quite into that, but when I was speaking with the associate to the Attorney General, we discussed a lot about making the landlord and tenant board, we need to make it all over again. So we need to like start fresh. And the one thing that we talked about is what's causing the backlog at the landlord and tenant board. And this is for non-payment of rent applications. That is what we need to try to streamline. There needs to be a more black and white situation where we're guiding our tenants to where they can get rent relief, but also understanding that do we really need a hearing when the tenant clearly hasn't paid rent in 6 months? And knowing that we've given them the information to seek out support from any type of rent relief programs at the same time. We just know that we have someone abusing us. So we really want to have a three strike you're out system, and being able to work the proof in the pudding with, hey, did you work out a payment plan with your landlord? And if they can't upload that information to the portal, which everyone has access to, why can't we just automatically do a no default order that would automatically generate this type of non-payment rent application? When the government made this changes trying to encourage tenants to walk into a payment plan with their landlord, many paralegals that supported tenants would say, hey, no, we're don't sign anything because they can get an order if you don't make that payment arrangements. And even when you go to the landlord and tenant board and you make a payment arrangement, the tenants do default, and they do, you file for that default order, the tenants are still able to apply for a stay, right? So we need to start closing those gaps and stops tenants from abusing the fact that there is these loopholes to avoid the eviction process, or just prolong it, not including divisional court, right? So this is why our landlords are leaving Ontario, because that the system is not protecting them as the housing provider.
Mm, mm. Yep.
That's a little bit of one. And then two, we got the L2 application. So that's usually happening for multiple reasons. But what I was recommending to our associate is that we would be looking at the L2 application for personal use applications, that there's a lot of fines. So the landlords can be charged with $50,000 fine for evicting someone and they didn't move into the rental property. And tenants do have up till 2 years to take their tenant to court if the landlord didn't move into the rental property. So a lot of protection there for the tenant, especially if the landlords are signing a declaration stating that they are moving into it. Why are we still using the landlord and tenant board to have hearings regarding personal use applications? So we need to start looking at the application and the workload instead of providing more, because they did L10 applications, which is once a tenant now leaves the rental property before we have to take them to small claims court. They said, no, Once they leave, you can now bring them back to the landlord and tenant board, but you got to find out where they live so that you can properly serve them. So a lot of it's going to be taking on way too much than what they can actually do, and just understanding that not everything needs a hearing. That usually takes sometimes 3 hours. We want to encourage them to do it more through the portal and do it more through writing, rather than actually having a full-on hearing. It's supposed to be simple and it's supposed to be streamlined. It's not supposed to be like the other court systems, and unfortunately, it has done that. And I said to him too as well that, in PEI, there's no fee to file an application, but in Ontario, it's $186. So it's like, why, how come like we're like the most expensive, then it's BC, and then you got people giving it away for free. And at the same time, like it shouldn't be this difficult. We shouldn't even have paralegals having to be in this. It should be the landlord, the tenant, and the adjudicator, or the dispute resolution officer. So I think that that's why it's a lot of a let's rewrite the landlord and tenant board and see what we can do to make it functionable, because right now it's failing the landlords and it's failing the tenants, and the taxpayers are paying for this. The taxpayers pay $110,000 a year salary for one adjudicator. Do we really need more adjudicators, or do we just need to understand that there has got to be a black and white system that happens, and this way tenants know what's going to happen if they don't pay, or landlords are going to know what happens to them if they decide to try to take advantage of any type of tenants. And we also do have the enforcement unit at the province that also steps in, and as well as bylaw with the cities that we live in, they also step in to help tenants. So there is a lot of protection. We just now need to make sure that we get the right players and the right team members at the table discussing what a redo on the landlord and tenant board would look like.
Yeah, especially in the favor of efficiency too.
Oh, and it's cost. Like I think like if you look how much money that we're wasting just by having to hire more adjudicators to deal with people who don't have money for rent, like why can't we just give the money to the tenants and keep them housed? Because we are seeing our homeless encampments is starting to go across in every single city across Canada almost, but definitely bad in Ontario. And speaking with one of the managers at the region of the Waterloo, she said it's approximately $3,000 a month to house one person in an emergency shelter. And that's not even including the costs that taxpayers are paying for when we have to house people in our hospital systems, and deal with them there. They say that there was like every $10 spent on housing is $20 saved on other services that are going out into the community to deal with the homelessness issues that we have. So a lot of it's got to be more proactive unless we're going to continue to keep providing services that are just not making the ends meet of what it intended to do. Just like we as taxpayers, we give government money, so taxpayer money to organization nonprofits, multiple nonprofits that do the exact same thing, which is just take the person's information, get them on the housing waiting list. And my area alone, it's 10 years to get anybody on a government housing waiting list. So the government can't build it. The nonprofits are struggling to build it. The landlord, the private sector wants to build it, but unfortunately, based on the red tape and the rules and the regulations, you now got them headed south. So we're starting to see a huge problem that's going to happen, and I don't think the taxpayers want to continue to keep building, managing, maintaining, and subsidizing government housing, because you know what? We need more services that need our attention versus the housing. So the government just needs to stop competing, and just let the landlords who know what they're doing and benefit them and benefit the tenants all at the same time.
Okay. So, on those points, what is your approach to deal with difficult tenants, and what processes should landlords go through for screening?
Well, one, you want to avoid difficult tenants, period. So that's going to be within your screening. And when you're going through the process of booking these people in, are they arriving on time? How are they dressed? Are they polite? Are they taking off their shoes? Are they being really friendly with you? Are they open? When we see our landlords trying to speak with their tenants when they're doing screening, they almost grill it like it's an interview, but you have to act very casual, trying to figure out if, they are the type of difficult tenant that you're trying to figure out. And the one thing that you could ask the tenants is like, oh, why are you moving? And you'd be surprised in how many people bash their current landlord. And they're like, oh no, really? Did that happen? What did you do? So they start telling you what they've done in that situation to find out if they are going to be a bad tenant. Now, there's good ones that act really good, so you're not going to get them you're going to get them in your unit. Now you have a difficult situation that you need to deal with. It's going to be about documentation, and you're going to run this as a business. Everything is going to be in writing. When you start to know this tenant is going sideways and they're not going to be listening to what you're telling them or listening to the rules, this is now where it goes strict pen and paper, making sure that you're writing everything, documenting everything down from the date to the time to what happened, what the tenant said, what did you say? Because this is the information that you're going to need when you're applying to the landlord and tenant board to have a hearing to deal with the situation. And a lot of the situation could be too with our landlords is making sure that you're upkeeping your property, making sure you're up on your maintenance. When you're renting out your properties for a very good penny these days, the tenants do want to have proper service. So everything has to be documented. Everything has to be done on a routine basis where you're going to be checking your smoke detectors, having your tenants sign off on those smoke detector forms that it's been checked and that they're not going to tamper with it. Everything has to be a business. A lot of people get into this thinking that it's going to be so easy, have the place, rent it out. And I just would encourage our landlords and our listeners to not get very personal. It's nice to be friendly. It's nice to kind of show that friendliness with your tenants, but don't give them all your information. Some landlords that I've met throughout the years, they drive a Ferrari. Are they going to go collect their rent in a Ferrari? No, they drive their little winter beater, just because they don't want tenants to know what they own. And it sucks, just because we don't know what type of tenants we're dealing with. And it really sucks as landlords because we have to put our home mailing address on these applications unless we get a PO box. This is where, it is a very dangerous atmosphere sometimes, especially when we are, hearing that there's talks of a recession. And then we're going to see more layoffs. And when it comes down to it, a business is a business and we understand, but the government or anybody for that matter shouldn't be expecting a private individual just to take care of a tenant just because they are a tenant. So you do have to be prepared. But everything has to be documented with your tenant, and never any landlord I've spoke with that got burnt, it's because they wore their heart on their sleeve and they were able to try to give breaks, try to help them out, give them breaks on rent or give them any type of products or getting them to work off the rent. That's usually when things start to kind of go sideways. So be very strict with your rules and regulations, and never buckle based on what you're putting in your lease.
Yeah, because you never really know what you're gonna get whenever you get it. So you really do have to sort of play your cards as they come, I feel. And it's difficult because, I mean, it's tough to not be who you are and just, oh, whatever, like I'll just, give this person a break, try and be like a nice person about it. But then, you also have to realize that, no, like, no, this is business, this is money. You never know. I mean, especially with the recession, like, yeah, very, very hard times we live in now. As much as you want to cut people a break, sometimes you also have to be realistic and you know hard-hearted to some things, I think. Tough it is.
It's called tough love, unfortunately, sometimes, right? We do have to see, like when we're doing credits, I tell our landlords less than 650. I don't, it's not going to be a good go of it. Anything over 650 is something that you should be looking for. A lot of landlords don't even know where to do their credit checks. And I'm like, oh, come on, like we have to get into this. Like this is coming from someone who was in this industry for almost 23 years. I should be, doing credit checks all the time. But in the beginning, I wasn't. You were just going with your gut. That has since changed. And it's not just about the score. Like you're looking at trade lines, you're looking at the addresses that they said that they lived at, and you're matching that with what the address is on their application. A friend of mine just did an application, and she's like, something didn't make sense based on where he said he lived and what his last address was. And I brought it up to him because we really liked him. And I guess he was living in his car for 2 years. And he didn't want to tell anybody, that he was homeless. And he worked a really good job, right? So it's kind of hard to find out, like, is the job, something that does he have other issues with this? Like, how is he homeless for this long? So this is where it kind of gets into reading through the lines of what people say to you versus what's going to be on their credit report. And we have a sympathy, and I've said to our elected officials on a regular basis that anyone that is considered high risk, we used to be able to take high risk potential tenants. But when the landlord and tenant board turned out to be an 8-month process to evict a high risk tenant, that's where the landlords had to scale back and taking high risk tenants. So if they were able to have a new rewrite of the landlord and tenant board, then we're going to be able to say, I'm willing to take this risk because I only have to take this risk for a minimum of 2 months. That makes sense. That's something that we can bear. They used to say, like, when you're a landlord, like, never take on this business unless you're able to fully protect and your business and deal with that tenant for a minimum of 6 months. That has now obviously increased through this time frame because it's not just the landlord and tenant board, it's also the loopholes that the tenants can go through. And we're starting to see, a lot of support from different tenant unions that are encouraging the tenants just to fight whatever applications against them, even when it comes down to a personal use application. They're trying to educate the tenant to fight it, which is just, I'm declaring I'm moving in, and you can take me to the court after. I want to get in. I've seen a landlord had to wait 3 years before she got access back to her property because the tenant fought it. And the tenant was in the arrears over $50,000.
Oh my God. I think that exact situation may have been like what Open Room's CEO went through, Wee Ting Balu. I had interviewed her in another episode, and yeah, for her, I think it was a 2-year dispute that she had to go through just because the tenant wouldn't leave and there was nothing she could do about it.
Oh, this one was 3 years. She was divorced by her. She got divorced, but she was couch surfing on her husband's couch because she had 3 kids. She didn't want to leave the children just with him and take off. And then when they went to the house to try to gain access for an inspection, the tenant got confrontational, and then the tenant decided to charge the landlord with assault. So that has it just it goes on, right? So this is why always bring somebody with you when you're doing your inspections. And if you can have yourself record your conversations at all times, because you never know when it's gonna, be useful for to protect yourself. Because unfortunately, this industry has gotten very petty, very, very petty.
So for short-term rentals, most people go through websites like Airbnb and just find fast placements, Kijiji, all that, all those websites. But Travel Nurse Houses, we work with nurses and we work with nurse agencies, and I think that allows a much more reliable experience when it comes to trying to find housing for people. But I wanted to ask your thoughts on that, on whether or not you think like even Airbnb is trustworthy or untrustworthy. I would think untrustworthy, but that's why, I'll ask you that first, and how you think maybe Travel Nurses stacks up to it as working only with travel nurses and people like actual professionals that are reliable. So just what are your thoughts on that?
I've never really been a short-term rental. I know a lot of our landlords were heading that way based on the policies that were coming out for long-term tenants. But then the cities had made bans against short-term rental units, especially Toronto. So that's when a lot of people started walking away from the short-term rental business. For Airbnb, I know we've dealt with people just partying and damaging, and then, coming to the rescue and even coming up and paying for the damages that were done based on certain bookings. But But I think with what you're doing and having an agency and dealing with them directly is going to be, great for the nurses to find those accommodations, and also, reaching out to community groups to say, hey, this is the agency. We have some nurses coming in. We're looking for accommodations. Now you're letting the private landlords who are long-term, short-term, whoever they are, deal with you directly and not have to go through the short-term leasing platforms or to deal with the landlord, or they can deal with the landlord directly. So I would say that would probably be a better run for it. And I think more of our landlords, knowing that there is this niche of members looking for accommodations or fully furnished, I think you'll probably see a lot of them turn to fully furnished mid-term, long-term rentals for these nurses. And they definitely have my gratitude.
Hmm. I know we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but we were also talking about the fact that like having a nurse come in also helps just the community out by sort of filling that like void that these healthcare like in the rural towns will face. And yeah, I think that is
Oh
one of the
yeah.
benefits that we bring.
That is one. Like I've seen it on our city council where they're talking about an agency that is looking at to bringing nurses into the place, and they said we're trying to find accommodations for them. We also have them coming into our area, but they're looking for a place where they can go fencing. So we would track down fencing for them to come in. She's like, sometimes we even give them cars, and I'm like, what? Dude, you need to tell us about this program so we can tell the people that we know to start coming in here, because it's definitely something that our community needs, and it's been crying for years now. Just of because we have a lot of people that have came into this into our province, definitely into Canada. And when that happens, you do need to keep up on everything else. You need to keep up on our resources, and I think that's where our government has failed. But unfortunately, it's almost like the federal government's bringing them in, but then the province have to do their part now and try to catch up and build our resources. And they haven't been able to do it as quickly as it was with the people coming in here. And we're starting to feel that pinch now because we're seeing long wait times in our emergency rooms, and we're seeing the need for family doctors and the wait time just to get into a family doctor. I bring my office, my family doctor's office coffee, so I get in when I call. So if anyone's with your doctors and you're going there, like call them up, see if they want some donuts or coffee. Like we do appreciate the medical industry, because they're without them, I don't think any of us will be here.
That just might be true. I think that just
For
might be
me
true.
coming from surgery, so so make sure that you guys, we see nurses on your application. That's it. Like we are looking at you. We are looking at you 100%.
So you're also the national ambassador of FrontLobby, which is just another great platform dedicated to helping landlords and renters. So could you quickly walk through the different features that are available for housing providers and just on the website?
Well, right off, you can do a credit report. You can get a long form Equifax credit report from Equifax through FrontLobby. They also give you the landlord and landlord credit bureau tenancy record as well. You're going to be able to get their scoring. There's no extra charge for the scoring. I know some people do that as well. So you're going to be able to start your initial screening process with your tenants by doing your credit check there. Now, once the tenants become your tenant or they are currently your tenant, you can register them on FrontLobby.com and create yourself a lease. For good tenants, you can give them you create a lease, and then they're going to be able to give consent to have their good payment history reported to the credit bureaus. And that's the good payments needing consent. But you do not need consent from the tenants to report a negative payment history. So that is where rent reporting is very key into getting into this business now that it's in Canada, and just bringing awareness to it. And then you can also do it on former tenants. So if you did have a former tenant that left you with a debt, you can't do it on former tenants who've paid on time, but you can do it on former tenants who left a debt. You can report them going back 6 years, and you can report that to frontlobby.com. And they have some new features coming up. I just can't say anything about their new feature yet.
Oh no.
But it's exciting. It's exciting. I don't know why they told me. They should have not told me. Change the subject before I tell you what they're doing.
Okay, well, that's actually a great because I do have maybe a bit more of a personal question, but you play like really important roles in the OLW group for FrontLobby, and I just wanted to know how you balance the work life. Like you're a parent, and that must just add to it like significantly. So, like, How do you balance just everything that you do?
I would say like I don't have I think the OLW and being on city committees and campaigns, and I think that's my social life. I don't go to movies, I'm not bowling, I don't do art classes or yoga. I think that's where my niche is. And the kids are in school from 9 till 3, so I'm able to kind of do a lot of my advocacy work and my volunteer hours through that time frame. And then you come home and you're cooking and cleaning. And then in the evening time, I can skip out for a meeting or an event. And then sometimes you just got those all day events like we just had in Toronto, which was fantastic. Matrix Cares is the one who's connecting me to our elected officials. So they always have my heart that it's a non-for-profit as well. So any landlords wanting to support what they're doing is great because they are allowing me to bring the voices of our community to the elected officials by opening these doors for me. So shout out to Matrix Cares for allowing me to be a part of that journey. So yeah, it's a lot of it's keeping my mind going. I think I've been doing it for so long that sometimes it's just easy, and our members in our community also help our members out. So I don't have to do too much of the consultings. But it is great to be a part of the community and have it underneath my belt. And I'm always open for other journeys that I can potentially squeeze in. Just keeps things alive
Keeps
and
things
not
busy.
boring. Yeah. They say when you want something done, you got to give it to a busy mom. So,
Oh, that you know what? That is so true though. Because especially because you know, I don't know if I should talk about my mom too much here just because I don't know if she'd want want it online, but I could say she is very hardworking and balances a lot, and I know that she does it great. So I love you, mom. Just in case you
aw, shout out to mom.
shout out to mom.
And my kids are older too. I have a 21-year-old. I have a 16-year-old who just got his first job yesterday. So I'm like
Okay.
so excited. So that's gonna, throw me into dropping him off for work, which is no problem. I'll do that, no problem. But he's like the babysitter though sometimes. And then we have an 11-year-old, almost 12, and then my youngest is gonna be 6 in October. So in my freedom stage. I tell everybody I'm like a career criminal where I like get my freedom and then I go back into diapers with how far the kids are stretched out. But now I'm in my freedom stage, and I'm getting back to what I love to do.
Yeah, wow. I was gonna say, yeah, now that the youngest is 6, like no more diapers, or at least, not for a little bit.
Oh yeah, he's no, we're done. We're done. We fixed that. Medical guys. So I didn't know your podcast. We're turning into comedy now. Give us
Yeah.
a thumbs up
So
and give us a share.
yeah. So to end things off, I did actually want to talk about the Ontario Landlords Watch and how it's been around for over 15 years, I think.
Yeah, I mean this July will be 15 years.
And I mean, how is that? How does it feel? That is a pretty significant milestone, I would say. It's not easy to keep something going for that long.
I know. Besides that, in my marriage, I think that's the longest I got going on. I think it was more of it's always the passion that I've had, and they always tell you like anything that you're gonna do in life, you always put your passion behind you. And it's always been that busy mom attitude, that nagging wife where you know something's unjust and you need to continue to keep trying to bring justice to an industry that it's not just for the people that, the government is treating unjustly. It's about the knowing that there's a better system. There's something out there that is so much better for the landlords, for the taxpayers that are already heavily burdened by taxes. There is something better. We just need to get the right people in power. And unfortunately, like I'm not that type of person to be the candidate to run for these government positions. I like working behind the scenes, just trying to give my 2 cents based on my education that I've been able to obtain over the last 23 years of being a private housing provider, and also getting to know what the government has been doing with their government housings, and getting to know nonprofits and how they work, and the way that the money scheme happens, right? So it's not just the private, it's government, it's nonprofit, bringing them all through that, even talking to them about inefficiencies with people who are on OW and ODSP. So a lot of that passion and education, it just can't go to sleep, unfortunately. I said that if they don't deal with me now, they're going to have to deal with my kids that have been listening to me for the last 15 years, talking about this. But hey, I do know that throughout the last 15 years, we're getting more warriors, more people, speaking the same way that I am. And, it's not going to be about making change because of Kayla from Ontario Landlords Watch. I want to make sure that I'm giving the other members of our community the same information that I know, so that they can become advocates themselves, so that it's more of a powerful voice, having the same message being said by multiple people than just one person representing the 9,700 members in our group.
Yeah, and I will say maybe a little bit off topic, but especially nowadays where so many people don't even try to do change, so many people don't even show up to vote, like having someone fighting is just what we need. And the more people that fight for change, the better things are.
Well, I'm going to be creating something soon where we can have people in the community being able to share their voice without the worry of repercussions from any government or agency or people or their job, so that you can come on and say what you need to say without having your name or your face. So stay tuned to the Ontario Landlords Watch page, and we'll keep you updated when that's live.
Okay. And I think that's a good place to finish off for today. We covered some pretty good information, so hopefully any upcoming landlords have what they need to succeed and understand things better.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be about just giving them the access to where this community of people are, because these people are like in these events. They've been doing it for years. They've learned and they've got burned. So the one thing that our landlords are learning from now is the fact that they're learning from the people who did get burned by the system. So you don't have to get burned to learn. You're going to learn from other people.
So, to all my viewers, please be sure to take a look at the Ontario Landlords Watch Instagram and the Facebook. Supporting these resources is really what helps the field grow and things change and just makes everything better. I've said it every other episode, but I'll say it again. Please check out these resources. It is for the best, I promise.
Thanks so much for having me on, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming. And I've been Sam. This has been Traveler's Haven, and I wish you safe travels.